Hey, hello! This is Professor Game, where we interview successful practitioners of games, gamification, and game thinking who bring us the best of their experiences to get ideas, insights, and inspiration to help us in the process of getting students to learn what we teach. And I'm Rob Alvarez. I work at IE Business School Publishing, where we create interactive and engaging learning materials. And today we are with Vasilis Gkogkidis. And this time I think I did say it right because I spoke to Vasilis previously. So Vasilis, are you prepared to engage?
Yes, I am.
And more importantly, did I pronounce it right this time?
You did. Well done.
Fantastic. So Vasilis is a gamification speaker and training working full-time for Gamification Plus alongside Pete Jenkins. He studied computer science and did a postgraduate in business management at the University of Brighton, which is where he met Pete Jenkins. He also runs training on gamification, introducing people to the basics of gamification. He organized Gamification Europe with Pete and is the Greek ambassador for GamFed, as well as the organizer of the Thessaloniki Gamification Meetup and a certified LEGO Serious Play facilitator. So Vasilis, let's get right into the first question. And we would like to know, what does a regular day with Vasilis look like?
So, a regular day will depend on where I am in the world. Like some of you, the gamification people know, I spend half of the year in Thessaloniki, Greece, where is my hometown, and half of the year in Brighton, in the UK. And we do quite a lot of traveling with Pete because the seminars and the training and some of the speaking is in countries all around, like Malaysia, Thailand, Dubai, Turkey, Italy, whatever, the UK. So if I'm in Greece, I don't really have an office, so I will either do some work home, which is quite quiet and nice to work, or go to an innovation hub. I have some friends that have a startup there, and I do have kind of a desk. They tolerate me till now, going there once in a while. Yeah. Or otherwise, maybe it's like a cafe with friends. I got a designer friend that we go there and do some work. If I'm in Brighton, we do share an office with JFDI Consulting. I think you met Joel at Gamification Europe.
Yeah.
Really nice guys for letting us share their office. Go there around 9, stay till like 6 or whatever it is. But usually there's not a typical day because we don't really work on the 8 hours a day, 5 days a week thing in Gamification Plus. I mean, Pete does it a bit more because he does have a family. But I do work on weekends some days. And I do take a Monday off occasionally and do work on a Saturday or a Sunday because I don't feel, that it's different or it should be different, or I don't feel more motivated on a Monday than on a Sunday to do work, It's quite cool that we don't monitor each other. I mean, he's my boss. He should monitor me. It's really cool that I got some freedom. Yeah. Sometimes I do monitor him. It's quite cool that is kind of free and not really set. As I told you before, sometimes maybe it's a Friday and we'll say, okay, you know what, we're very tired, let's go watch a movie instead of working. We did that after Gamification Europe because we were both really super tired, and we just went into the cinema and watched the Justice League movie. We didn't do any work on a Friday, which is quite cool. And I think especially people that work in creative industries and do something creative like gamification, they should be like that because, you're not creative on Monday and you stop being creative on a Saturday. Or
Yeah.
if you're tired, then you're not gonna do a lot of work, or the quality is not gonna be there. So I think it's better to take some time off and relax and do something stimulating for your brain, like watch a movie or whatever.
Sounds fantastic. But now, Vasilis, I would like to shift. I would like to shift from having your regular day, which sounds amazing and sounds very exciting, and I'm sure by the way you referred to it, you're very happy about the way things are going. I would like for you to tell us now what you would consider the worst application of gamification where you've participated in, where you've somehow been a part of, so that we can have the inside story. You don't need to name any names, of course.
Yeah. Truth is, I've worked in the gamification industry for a year and a half now, and I have not been involved in so many consulting and design projects. And I think one of the problems that we have with Pete is some of the consulting and design we do never gets implemented by our clients for some reason. So I guess one problem is that they don't actually go through with the plan, or if they do, they don't give us the feedback. So sometimes we don't know how it went. So I will tell you a case where I designed a game wrong. I did some not bad game design, but I did not think about my audience enough, and I excluded some people from the game without meaning to do so. So with my meetup, the Thessaloniki Gamification Meetup, for the last 3 months, we do an event every month that was for a good cause. So in November, we did an event with Schedia. Schedia is a street magazine. I'm sure you have them in Spain as well. I don't remember the name, but they're all over the place. So homeless people selling magazines in the street and getting quite large percentage of the how much the magazine costs, so they can have some cash to
Okay.
rent a place, have a more decent life. And we did an event with the street magazine in Greece. There's only one, unfortunately, where basically we designed some games to create a community and for people that are homeless and selling the magazine to engage with the people that live in Thessaloniki, and maybe you pass them by, you walk by these people and you never talk to them because you're shy or it's weird, or you know so we wanted them to engage with the public, let's say. So we
Okay.
invited around 10 people that sell the magazine and around 15 people from the city, locals, so they could engage through games, and have fun. And I had designed 3 games. One was bingo, inspired by Altu Yilmaz, the Turkish ambassador of Gunfair, that were really good friends. So it's a bingo where basically you meet people, you ask questions, and you say, okay, who has 3 brothers and sisters, and you write his name down, etc. That's how it works. Then we played Jenga, which was fine, but the final game was kind of create your own story in teams. So every person would write a sentence, and the next person will read it and try to continue the story. So you promote team building, working together, kind of being creative. And there was one guy that I think had a big problem with writing, one of the sellers of the
Okay.
magazine. I don't know why, you cannot ask, it's not polite to ask, but he had a really big problem writing. He could not write. So at some point, his wife was with him and he said, okay, I can write for you. But he was proud and he didn't want to show to people that he cannot write. So the whole process took a very long time.
Of
and I think
course.
he felt bad, and I felt bad because I kind of made him feel bad. Um, so I failed to think that some of these people may have a problem writing or expressing themselves in writing, because some of them have mental health problems and all sorts of problems, and that's how they ended up on the street usually, because the system did not care for them as it should. Um, so I kind of excluded this person from taking part in the exercise, and I felt really bad. Um, so that was my one big fail in designing. Uh,
Vasilis, what would you say was, because I have something in mind, but what would you say was the biggest learning for you from that experience? What did you learn? What would you have done different now that you've seen that?
I would spend more time thinking about who is going to play the game, and I would spend more time engaging with the person that knows the audience more. So the way the street magazines around the world work, there is some not business person, but someone that organizes the whole thing and gives the magazines to the sellers and tells them, where the spots are throughout the city. Is basically a manager, let's say, you know.
Yeah.
So I would engage with their manager a bit more to try to analyze the games and ask them if there is a potential problem. I'm not saying this. I'm not saying they would definitely know there is a potential problem, but they might be able to give me a heads up.
Yeah, at least they can have. I mean, they're not necessarily experts in profiling people, but the people when they've been interacting with others, they probably know some of the problems that might come up at some point, and it's a bit easier in that sense for them to know that than for you because you've never interacted with that audience before.
Yes, definitely. So that's what I would do differently. And that's one of the really good things when you work in house with a company, running any sort of training or consulting. You're able to engage with the audience and the people that want to run the project directly. Because when we do
Yeah,
training for a training company and people from a lot of companies join this training, I don't really know what they need, you know? And I try to motivate them to send me an email beforehand, but that doesn't happen. It's quite hard to design training for everyone that comes to the training. You try to, but you can never please everyone,
yeah,
because you don't
makes
know them.
sense.
You don't know what they need, and you don't know what the problems are specifically. So that's one of the. It's not a problem, but it's kind of a setback when you work in a training and you have 10 people from 10 different companies. They're not going to be interested in every part of your training because you design kind of a general training for them to try to please everyone, which never happens. So,
Yeah, from your story, I exactly what you said about trying to understand your users as best as you can. And that's what I wanted to pull from. I mean, always try to make engagers. Always think of making the best effort available to you because you can't have it all. The best effort to understand your audience, to understand your users, your players, your students, whomever that is. It's worth your while because then the design will be more directed towards what that audience is expecting from you or what that audience could engage with or what that audience is able to do as Vasilis' story was very well portraying what happened. Vasilis, now I would like to make once again a shift and from going to the lowest story where you found you learned something from that failure, that first attempt in learning. I would like you to tell us now what has been the biggest challenge that you've faced and actually solved using gamification.
I liked what Monica said on your podcast, Monica Cornetti. I was listening to that podcast yesterday, and I like when she said, "I'm using gamification on myself as well." And because I think I do the same thing, and for the last few months, I don't even think about it. I think I did use gamification on myself to organize Gamification Europe. Um, because Gamification Europe has kind of been.
Not a small challenge, I have to say.
Yes, Gamification Europe has been the biggest challenge I faced till now, uh, maybe on any level in my life. Professionally, definitely. It was a very intense process to make it happen. We had very small amount of time, very little resources, um, and I think we were very lucky that it went as good as it did. Um, and I did use some gamification on myself to make that happen. as I told myself, like Monica said, okay, you're very stressed, it's very stressful, but hang in there another 10 minutes, another 10 minutes, and if you're really unhappy after that, then you can stop. Or, look at the big picture. Try to imagine how exciting it will be if that whole thing comes together and it's really good and you learn a lot and people are excited about it. You know, you try to motivate yourself sometimes when the challenge is too high and when you're out of flow, because flow is a big thing for me and I really believe in that theory. So if I feel out of flow, I try to focus on the big picture and what the goal is, and try to set a challenge, a small challenges that lead up to a big challenge. I think setting small goals that lead to a big one is really the way to go when you feel something is really difficult. And that's been my problem in a lot of situations. And I think for a lot of people as well.
I would take from that, Vasilis, for the engagers, the thing of facing small challenges to actually solve a big one. I think that's fundamental. If you're facing, for example, you're creating a new course from scratch, maybe you don't think about the whole course in itself. Maybe you split it into 2 or 3 parts and you start designing for each of those 2 or 3 parts. Or maybe for a single session, see what it looks like. The first hour and a half that you're going to have with your students, with your learners, maybe that's the challenge you want to face first, so that you don't feel overwhelmed by a massive challenge, but instead you break it up into many small parts which you're actually able to face by yourself. What do you think of that? What would you like the engagers to take from your story, Vasilis?
That is exactly the way I've been trying to do anything in my life for a long time before I learned gamification. Because I'm someone that needs to be creative and do things like we discussed. I play music and it was really difficult to get into that, and it's really difficult to go and record your songs and like make an album, because it's something that makes you really self-aware, and it kind of puts you in the position where you face yourself, and that's always hard for everyone to do, face yourself and say, oh, what are you doing right now, what is that thing, what does it say about you? So self-awareness is always difficult to overcome when you need to be creative and when you need to teach people something. So also what I wanted to say is break things down in small parts, and I also use gamification in my training, of course. But I don't exactly gamify the whole process. I do small exercises to show them, and workshops to show people how it works, and then take them out of the experience and kind of explain it. So let's say we did an exercise where they design their avatars. They pick an avatar for the whole training, and your name is not Rob anymore. Your name is, I don't know, Sir Rob the Knight of Barcelona or something. I don't know, something. In Turkey, I was a flying kebab. Okay, that was my avatar. Um, so they go through the experience and they really engage with it, but suddenly I stop and I tell them, "Did you see what happened? Where are you now? Who are you?" And everyone says, "I'm the flying kebab." So I try to explain gamification. Yeah, that's what it happens, because they get absorbed, they get in flow, but suddenly when you stop them and you tell them get out of flow now, they are still in flow, and they need to understand that to understand games. When I play a game and someone talks to me, I'm not listening. I'm playing the game, I'm engaged with the game. So I use gamification to explain gamification. You know, this is the easiest and most effective way to explain gamification to someone. Actually, gamify something like ice breaking exercise. You know.
Yeah, Vasilis, I was going to ask you precisely because the next question, I think this starts going into the next question, which is what is the process that you follow when you want to apply gamification to a situation, to a workshop, to a consulting project that you have? Is there any process that you follow?
Yeah, of course. I mean, we did kind of define that process with our framework that we designed with Pete. But roughly speaking, I think the first and really important step that can take a lot of time is define the problem. Okay, in every workshop I do, and when I talk about gamification, I talk about the problem a lot because gamification is not just fun. We are trying to solve a problem, whatever that might be. And people have a hard time defining problems actually. And that is one of the sessions I run on my training. Talk about problems. What is a problem? How do you define it? How does it affect your everyday life? Let's say you got people that are not engaging with your learning in your company. You have some e-learning software and people are not learning from it. you know how does that affect your company? Why do you need to change? So I try to define the problem and work around it, and what are the effects of the problem, because that's when people really realize how bad it is, or how bad it is not. I really liked what um, Andrzej Mazuski talked about in Gamification Europe, solutioneering. You create a problem to solve it with gamification, or whatever your methodology is. Creating problems or enlarging problems that are not that big is very common with people.
Yeah, no, creating a solution where there's not a problem
Yeah,
is something that we have to stay away from, of course.
creating a problem out of nowhere, or presenting something that is a hiccup as a problem. When I have a hiccup, it's a hiccup. I drink some water and it goes away. But when I'm coughing for a week, then there is a problem. I'm ill, I need to go to the doctor. Yeah, you need to sort it out. And sometimes we talk about problems with people and they say, oh, you know what? Actually, I'm not sure gamification is the right way to go, or I'm not sure this is actually our biggest problem right now. Talking about it, I realized there is this other thing that is much bigger, and gamification is a better solution. That is a better tool. So I really start with the problem and stick with it until the person on the other side of the team, the company, says, okay, that is it. We are sure about it. And we want to actually spend some energy, money, resources to solve it with gamification. Because again, you give them a solution and people go, that's not my problem anymore. That was never your problem.
Yeah.
Usually, if you got a problem and you really know what it is, you just know what it is. If you kind of know what it is, then you get a consultant in and you say, yeah, that's my problem. But after a month, you say, oh, you know what? That was not really my problem.
And you lose a lot of time, of money, and of effort.
It's frustrating and it's counterproductive, for us. So I try to stick with the problem, even if it becomes irritating for some. Yeah. So I try to start with the problem, and then when I work with a company, I try to work with, if it's like an in-house project, I try to work with rewards a lot. So if they want to give some rewards to their employees for doing something, or building a reward system that is not entirely digital, then I try to work with rewards a lot, because that's another big problem. How do you keep things intrinsic? With rewards is a big problem. And we've all talked about it, and you talked about it with Monica on the podcast, and other people, I'm sure, have talked about rewards. And it's really hard to make a reward system that keeps the fun going, and people do not act just to get the reward. They actually care about the process, they care about their learning, they care about what they're doing, and not just the end game. Because most people go, well, yeah, we'll give them money, we'll give them a raise.
Yeah, I mean, I always like to remind people that learning is actually fun. I mean, we always, I mean, the educational system and many of the things that we've gone through as a human species has turned learning into something that is not fun anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, and one of the things I always like to call out is grades. The way the grading system is set up is to have winners and losers, but not losers the ones that can come back from that, like in games. When you lose and you lose pretty bad, it's pretty hard to recover from that, and there's no learning involved in getting a good or a bad grade necessarily. So always remember that learning, I mean, used to be fun when you're very very small and you're a baby. Learning everything can be fun. Anything you learn can be fun, and we can have a lot of fun learning things. So try to keep that in mind when you're designing
Yeah.
behaviors. So Vasilis, you were talking about, you said that first you like to define very clearly what's the problem, then you go into designing the reward system, and then
Then I talk a lot about the users because that's another big problem that people have. They cannot really think about the users of the system. So I try to kind of talk like you could say UX designer or what's this theory called? The human-centered design. I don't really present these ideas to them because it's a bit too much, but I try to take the principles and get them through to people. So I tell them, we are here to design something that serves the users. It doesn't serve you, because if the system does not serve the users and if the system does not attend to their needs, then they're not going to use it for a long time. So if I have an application in my phone that is gathering some data from me, okay, fine, but what are you giving me in exchange? If that application is not very useful for me, I'm gonna delete it really quickly, really soon. And I think applications on our phones are a really good example of how some of them are not really useful in the long term. So I try
yeah.
to make people think, what does the user want? What will the user get away from the whole experience? And not just in terms of rewards, in terms of the experience itself, the learning, what does it mean for their journey? Because we are all on a journey. Whatever job you're doing, whatever it is, you are on a journey. And how does the system that you design, reflect that? So a lot of people think, oh yeah, they need to learn. So I need to give them videos and I need to give them PDF files to read this case study. Yeah, okay, that is one part of the process, and of course we need to think what the goal is. But you have to think about the user. What does the user want? How does the user want the system to look like? What is the situation? I have people from banks, for example, banks or like serious industries come to the training and they tell me we just need some fun in the company. It's just boring. And I just tell them, okay, if that's what you need, you should put it into your game. So make it a bit more, I don't know, outgoing or social or like more colors or more fun, more gamey. So really think about the users and what they need.
Different users need different things. I mean, people in different stages of their lives, etc.
And I already told you my mistake, for example, that I did not think about the users enough. Think about the users, think the problems they're facing. How could you help them solve these problems? How could you reflect their values, maybe?
Yeah, their way of learning, their way of thinking, their way of interacting.
And then the other thing is play test. Play test as much as you can. And build a small system as a starting point, because people go and try to build really complicated things, and I'm like, no, why would you do that? Make something small, make sure it works, and then expand and play test along the way as much as possible to make sure everything is working.
That's something that we have to learn from games, and the best experiences from actual video games and game studios. One of the main things, and I've heard always Amy Jo Kim talking about that, is the fundamental part of testing what you're doing and making sure that what you're thinking are assumptions and to
Yeah,
treat them as such.
definitely. And agile development, of software is the same thing essentially. You build a prototype, you define a need, you build a prototype, very small. You get feedback, you iterate it, you do the same thing over and over again until you feel there is.
Until it works and it has the
Yeah,
whole thing.
because the whole thing again goes back to the user. Even if you don't play test, then how do you know it's fun? How do you know it's useful? How do you know the game?
How do you know it's even working?
Yeah, how do you know? And in all the trainings I do, I make people play test and prototype, and I give them specific amounts of time to do that, like an hour or 45 minutes or whatever. I always tell them when they start, the clock is ticking. You need, yeah,
And
you
that's
need
it.
to come up with something that is working. So you cannot build a huge system.
You have to build something that works and move on with
Yeah.
that. And talking about moving on, Vasilis, I would like to move on to the second part of the interview. And here I will make a challenge for the two of us so that we can keep the answers a bit more concise, more straight to the point. Because this here we want straight tips, tools, and tactics that we can use in our everyday designs and gamification. So the first question is, what would you name as a best practice in gamification?
Playtest.
Playtest,
Yeah,
certainly.
it's
That's fundamental.
kind of all of these things that we talked about. Get to know the user as best as you can, um, and play test. And one big thing I'm seeing with people, because I'm engaging with a lot of different people, you are creative. Every human on planet Earth can make things. Okay, there is no magic behind game design. There is art, and what art really means is that I try to improve. Okay, there is this path to mastery. So I play the guitar, and there is me, and then there is Jimi Hendrix. Okay, so there is a path from where I am to being Jimi Hendrix, which is a path to mastery. But that doesn't mean I cannot play guitar.
Exactly.
Because I have a lot of people coming to the training, and I tell them, okay, now we're gonna make a game. And everyone is like, I've never made the game, I don't know, I'm not really creative. Because again, some of these people are accountants and they work in banks, and what they do every day is not really creative. And they think that only artists can be creative. But that's not the case. We are all creative, and we can all make something. So don't be scared to put something together. That is my advice to anyone. Don't be scared to make something small. Test it with your friends. Test it with your kids if you're scared of failure. You know, we are all scared of failure, of course. Definitely. There's no person in the universe that is not scared of failing. But don't for 1 second think you cannot make something. It's not gonna be Call of Duty. It's
Absolutely.
not gonna be Minecraft.
What's I would like to move on to the next question because we still have space for some more
Yes.
advice on future questions. What's your favorite game?
It is always the hardest question. There are so many of them, so many I liked. So, because I was sure you would ask that question, I've done some work. Okay, I searched my memory. So, my favorite games are strategy games. That's the first one. If I had to pick one game that I really could not stop playing, and I've played again and again, it's Kingdom Rush. Do you know Kingdom Rush? Kingdom
No,
Rush.
I haven't.
So Kingdom Rush is a mobile game you can play on your phone, or a tablet or whatever. I think there is a desktop version for the first version because they had like an expansion. Kingdom Rush is a game from Ironhide Studios. It's actually a game studio in Uruguay, a country that I don't know how the gaming industry. It's tower defense. It's a tower defense game set in a kind of medieval fantasy world, and I played it non-stop for a long time. But there are other
I'm sure
strategy
you
games
did.
that I've played a lot, loads of hours on. Civilization, you know.
I've found it that most of the gamification designers, you named Monica Cornetti, and she openly says that she's never been a gamer, but most gamification designers, we have enjoyed games for quite a bit.
Yeah, I mean, everyone can enjoy games, and I don't consider myself like a gamer guy, but I've always enjoyed games as a part of art. Really, like I enjoy painting or music. I
As a hobby, at
yeah,
least.
I think games are very interactive art.
Who would you like to hear interviewed in Professor Game?
I would like to hear Jane McConigal
Hmm.
being interviewed by you.
It's a recurring answer for sure.
Yeah. um, and I'm sure a lot of people want to hear from her. It's quite interesting because Jane does not says she is a gamification designer or gamification professional really, but she does a lot of work with games and how games can improve the world really. And I really like that approach because that way you can engage a lot more people, I think. And sometimes in gamification, I feel that maybe we're losing some people just because of the word, because they don't really know what it is and they don't understand what it is. So if you talk about, hey, games that improve things, or games that change the world for the better, then I think it's a bit more inviting. And I would like to hear her view on the gamification industry, of course, and because she's one of the first people that talked about it, and I'm sure she has some opinion on how it evolved from 2010. So
Absolutely.
I would love to hear some feedback from her on what's happening, and if she's following the gamification industry at all. Maybe she isn't.
Yeah.
I don't know. And what is her vision for the future?
Now, I would like to know, what is your superpower in gamification, Vasilis?
That is a hard question, um, but I'll try to answer that. I think that, first of all, I think I'm a good teacher, so I can get the points of gamification across to people, what it is, how does it work, what are the basics. So I really enjoy talking to people about gamification and doing all the trainings. I think I'm quite good at that because I've been teaching for quite some years now. Not gamification, but other things like computer science. And my other thing is, I really like finding out what is the best user experience, and again defining the problems as we said. So what does the user want out of the system? Because again, some people are not honest about it, so I try to press them a bit, and of course I try to be honest myself. When I try to design something, even if it's training or something else, is that useful? What is the result? I try to put myself in the place of that person using the app, being in the training. How would I feel? So I really like putting myself in the shoes of others.
And that way you can teach them better, as you were saying before.
I think that's the only way to improve your teaching.
Yeah.
There's no other way, really.
Vasilis, we're going into the last actual question, and it's about any quick advice that you want to give to our listeners, especially the engagers that have never used gamification or game-based learning or games or game thinking for learning. What would you tell them?
I would tell them to read about it, do some research, because myself, I'm not sure how good of a designer I would be if I wasn't taught by Pete. So what happened for me, Pete taught me what gamification is at this postgraduate course I did in Brighton. So I would say you don't need to do a course necessarily, but at least read some books. I love reading. Since I was like 6 years old, I wanted to know how to read comic books. That's why I
Fundamental.
Yeah, I read. Yeah, I learned how to read before going to school because I had this Asterix and Obelix comic books and I wanted to learn. So I'm a big fan of reading, and I think that's one thing we should all do, myself included, keep reading. So I want to give them maybe a reading list.
Sure.
To have a look at some things. So one book I read fairly recently, I should have read it before, is Drive by Daniel Pink. Drive and Daniel Pink talk a lot about motivation and rewards. So what does research tell us, and what is reality? What happens in business basically does not go with research. They are not aligned. Research says that we are motivated by freedom, by purpose, and sometimes these things are absent in business, in many industries. For example, this is a great book to sort out what does a reward mean and what does motivation mean for people.
Any other books you would like to recommend?
Jane McGonigal.
Which one?
What's the title?
Reality is Broken?
Reality is Broken. Thank you. That was a great book. That was a book that I understood gamification. I think I would understand gamification even without doing the course from that book. From the examples and from the whole reasoning behind it, she's a great writer. Also for The Win from Kevin Verbach, he had absolutely amazing case studies of failures as well. he had some great case studies demonstrating fails in gamification, because people need to be aware of that as well. They need to be aware that gamification is dangerous if it's not done right, or if it's done with wrong ethics in mind. You
Yeah.
know, like I follow quite a lot of case studies, like China, for example, and the whole Sesame Street thing, and that's not good. That is dangerous. You know, we should be aware of the dangers
It's
as
at
well.
least very dangerous. Absolutely.
Yeah, so do research. That is my advice to everyone that wants to learn more about gamification.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Vasilis, it's been a pleasure. And thank you very much for coming for this interview. Can you give us what's the best way that we can connect with you? And then we'll say game over.
Thank you for inviting me, first of all. It's been lovely talking to you. Great questions. Well done on the questions. So anyone that wants to get hold of me and for some reason talk to me, I don't know why would you talk to me, but if you do want to do that, I am on all social media with my name, Vasilis Gkogkidis, which you can see on podcast, on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube. I try to stay active on social media and follow what's happening in gamification.
For the proper spelling, you can find it on professorgame.com. You just type Vasilis and you'll find all the right places.
Yeah. And my email, I can give you my email if you want to give to people, anyone that is interested. But any social media is perfectly fine for me.
Fantastic.
Or send us a message on our website, gamificationplus.uk. Just send us a mail there, and I get to see everything. Or any of the company's pages on social media as well. I get to manage them all. Hey. So
the big guy in social media is Vasilis, so you know where to contact him. Vasilis, thank you very much. It's been a lot of fun. This has been probably one of the longest interviews I've made, and I have to say I have enjoyed every single minute. Thank you very much. And
cool. Thank you. Me too.
It's game over.
Hey, did you enjoy this interview with Vasilis Gkogkidis? Well, then go to professorgame.com/subscribe and get started into our email list. That way we can be in contact and you will be the first to know of any opportunities that Professor Game might have for you. And before you go on to your next mission, would you like to know how Scott Hebert turned a science class into a medieval gamified classroom? Well, listen to the next episode of Professor Game. See you there!